Welcome to another video on data to decisions. In today's video, we'll be building a simple bar chart with multiple series of data. So let's say, for example, we have by month, we have data on how many employees are there in each of these departments. So essentially, we have two dimensions. So one is the department name, the other one is the month. So we have two dimensions, and the measure is the number of employees. So when you have a measure and two dimensions, you could use the bar chart in this way. And the chart that when we build it, it will help us understand for marketing department, how many employees were there in January, which is 4, in February it is 11, and in March it's 99. So you can see and compare the number of employees within marketing from month to month. You can also decide to compare, for example, if I click on this March series, you will see that in March, marketing has 99, human resources has 26, supply chain has 89 employees, and information technology has 10 employees. So it allows us more comparisons, and specifically within one segment, here marketing, you can compare across another dimension, which is a month, and how many employees are there in each month and how it has changed. So this is the objective or the benefit of such a bar chart. Now we could do something similar with column chart as well, which we have done videos on. But this will be helpful where your category names are much longer. For example, human resources, information technology. When you have these longer names, putting them into a column chart will take up more space and it's a little bit less effective visually. This is where the bar charts can be helpful. And also, depending on if you're building this as part of a dashboard, and in some cases, the bar charts would fit better from a dimension perspective and aesthetics perspective. So in those cases also, you may choose the bar chart on top of the instead of the column chart. But in terms of the information that it provides, bar chart and the column charts do provide similar information. It's just about what kind of data you're dealing with, how long are your category names, will determine which one is more effective. And so let's get started now. We're going to build this exact chart step by step in Microsoft Excel, and we will learn how to create it and also to format it. Let's get started. So I'm going to keep this chart to the bottom left so that we can use it as a reference. But I'm going to start by building a chart from the same data. So I can choose the same. So select all the cells, go to Insert, go to 2D bar cluster, and now it automatically creates this bar chart, which looks very similar to this, except in colors and some formatting, but it's basically got it. So if your data is structured in this format, then Excel will automatically create and save a lot of time to build this chart. But let's say, for example, your data may not be in the structure, we can still do it. So I'm just going to do another version of this from a blank chart. So go and insert without any data being selected. I'm going to go and do 2D bar chart. And now I'm going to do select data. So since there is no data there, it's saying nothing. So I'm just going to remove everything. So let's say it's a completely blank one. I'm going to go ahead and hit add. And then I can give a name such as January. And then I will give all these values. And then, so this is my January, and the x-axis labels are the department names. So now you can start seeing that the chart is building up. So now I have only January data, but I can now add February and this way. And once again, department names. So now you start seeing that February is on the chart. Now we'll do one more thing and then add the March. This is definitely not the most efficient way to do it, but by doing this, we learn what data, how Excel is adding them as separate series, and then how it all comes together behind the scenes. By knowing that, you can make more modifications and more advanced charts yourself in the future. So again, we've gotten to the same point, but hopefully this is clear how Excel is handling it. These are all three different series, and then you can enter the horizontal axis labels here, and you can edit the data that is part of each series by hitting edit, giving it a different name if you'd like, and also you can choose the specific cells that you want in the data in the chart. Now, there we are. There we go. So we're done with this. So now let's get into formatting of this. So first thing I'm going to do is to hit the plus and hit chart title. So I want the chart title to be, let's say, for example, employees by month, department comparison. Again, I'm just going to use something generic, but I can format the title. I'm going to give a white font color to the little bit darker background. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller in font size. I'm just going to move it to the left. There we go. And the next thing I want to do here is to change the legend. So right click on the legend, not one thing, but you can right click on the entire legend here or click on the legend. You can also go by going here to legend, and I can change the location of the legend to make it top. So I'll move it to the top. Now, I don't want it here because it seems to take up more space. I'm going to move it to the open space here so it doesn't take up any more vertical space. And this allows me to make the visual bigger. There we go. So we have moved the legend. So the legend is extremely important when you do a multi-series bar chart. This allows the user to differentiate between the different bars. That's extremely important. You can choose these contrasting colors. Again, please be aware of who you're presenting to. You want to make sure that you're choosing the colors and the formatting with only that in mind, whether the user will be able to understand correctly without any misleading information or misunderstanding. And also, can they interpret the data as quickly as possible without having to spend a lot of time? That's what you should always use as your guidelines for choosing the formatting. Now, what I'm going to do is to right click and hit Format Data Series, and I can go into the Fill option, and now I can change the color. So let's just do maybe this is March. So let's say we go with a little bit darker blue. And then when I click on February, I can again go to solid fill and change the colors to a little bit lighter blue. And you don't have to click on the chart series. There's other ways to do it. So I'll show you, for example, you go in the drop down, you can now see there are three series that we created and you can choose one of them. So let's say I choose January and I can change the color from the automatic color. I can now change it to a little bit lighter blue. So this gives us the gradient colors that we want. And here the main thing is if you don't see the formatting menu on the right side panel, generally speaking, click on the chart, press Control 1, opens up that side panel, then go and choose what you want to customize and make the choices. Okay, now let's continue. The other thing I want to see here is if I want to add a little bit of a gap between these series, you can see that the dark blue and the light blue, they are kind of stuck together. Um, so I'm going to right click and do Format Data Series. And here you can see that the series overlap is 0%. So what if I do 25%? So you see that they're actually overlapping. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and you see that they are now overlapping one over the other. So, but what if I want to do minus 25%? Then you start seeing a little bit of a gap between them. So I generally prefer to have a little bit of a gap, not too much, a little bit of a gap. It's up to you for the presentation that you're making. Here is how you can control it. Right click Format Data Series, series overlap. If you give a negative amount, it's going to increase the space between the different series. If you do 0, then they're going to be right next to each other. If you're giving a positive amount, that means they're going to overlap one on top of the other. Okay, so that is that. Then the gap width. The gap width, I'm just going to show you how it works. If you're going to reduce the gap width, you start the marketing and the human resources, they get closer. If I keep reducing it, you'll see that the marketing um, bars and the human resources bar, they're getting closer. But on the other hand, if I make them, the gap with 300%, you see that there is a much bigger gap between human resources bars and the marketing bars. So I don't like them very close to each other, generally speaking. And again, it depends on how many categories I have. In this case, I'm just going to, let's say 100%. I would have to go on 50%. There we go. So this is nice, enough distance, but not too far. And for the four categories I have, this works fine for me. So now we have controlled the bars, location, and the width and the gap and everything. Now click on the chart, go and say plus access titles. This allows us to name these things like, okay, what are we actually displaying here in this chart? It's overlapping the chart, so you can click on it and then just slightly move it up. And the same thing here. There we go. Now we can resize the chart area. I can give this as the name of the department. So I can call it department, and I can call this one as number of employees. So as I've said in the previous videos, generally the choice of these will depend also on if the chart title itself is communicating the story and makes it clear what we are measuring here, what we are displaying here, then we can skip access titles. In this case, I've already said we are counting number of employees. So do I need another access title here? Probably not. And then you've already made it clear it's a department comparison. So do I need it? Probably not. Especially since the legend tells us that this is each is a different month. So most likely, if the audience has seen a similar chart before, if I'm again and again presenting this every month to the same audience, I don't need to take up more space by putting the titles. But if this is the first time I'm presenting it, if this audience has not seen this data before, they're new to this, then I would recommend adding the access titles. Okay, moving on to the next part of formatting is these vertical lines that are there. So if you right click on them, you can choose format grid lines. And as I've told you before, there's also another way to do it. So you can click on the chart, go to this drop down, and then you'll see the horizontal axis major grid lines. You can choose it that way too. I like to generally put a solid line, but the color, I would choose the least visible color. So it's still there, but not really taking up attention. So that's what I would do in this case. And then let's add labels. So adding labels to the chart um, is something that you have to decide based on the amount of data that you have and how easy it is to misinterpret. You may want to add the labels to make it much, much clearer. So for example, here, if I click on the chart and I go ahead and add data labels, so it adds labels everywhere. I have four categories and I have three different series. So it's already 12 different data points. And if you have more and more, adding labels to all of them will make it look like a lot of clutter on your chart. And so that's not what we want to have. But in this video, the focus is how do you create a chart, what kind of controls you have. You do have control over the data labels. So let's say I uncheck them, so everything goes away. If I only want to show March, I can click on the March color bar, and then I add data labels. Now only the March series will have because if it's the latest, most recent month, maybe I only want to show that month. Whereas the February and January are there for comparison and context if needed. But my primary focus of presentation in this chart right now is the most recent month. In that case, I would only do the labels for the most recent month series. Okay, now let's go with this approach. So we've done this. Now I'm going to click on this chart again, and you can go to the fill and border. I'm going to do a solid border, 1 point width. The color I choose is a little bit darker, and I'm getting rounded corners. So there you have it. So let's see if we got close enough to what we wanted to build. Pretty close, pretty close. I think we made some other design choices, but generally speaking, they look similar. And you can click on the font of the labels, and you can also customize the colors. So if I want a different color, I can do so as well. So you have a lot more control, but what we have covered in this video allows you to create a basic bar chart with multiple series. We're going to do a lot more advanced videos, so please do subscribe to the channel and continue to watch this playlist for data to decisions. We already have tons of data visualization videos on our channel. If you have any suggestions for the next video, please post it in the comments. I look forward to listening to your feedback and responding, and I'll see you soon in the next video.